What's going on, car nerds? Welcome back to the Fuel for Thought podcast. Thanks for joining us for another episode. This week we have episode 27 for you guys. I'm Jay.
I'm Kevin.
We're your hosts, and let's jump right into this one. So this week we want to talk about some hypercars, because who doesn't like a good hypercar? And this week we wanted to talk about not just any hypercars, but the fastest and craziest in the world. So yeah, you want to kick us off with the top one here?
Yeah, so this is kind of, I feel like the hypercar world kind of boomed with the LaFerrari P1 in 918.
Definitely.
That was kind of like the holy trinity, and I don't know if it's ever going to be to that level. It's I don't know how they managed to like all come out at the same time and all so different, but it was just the era of supercars or hypercars, and really I think set the trend for like mind-blowing, fast, exotic looking, and just sheer speed.
Definitely. And I remember like the Grand Tour episode where they tested all of them. I think they were like different episodes, but then in one crazy episode they actually put them all head to head, and then even like certain cars couldn't do certain things because the manufacturers didn't allow it. But it was just such a cool thing to see with all those like legendary brands like Porsche, Ferrari, and McLaren. They all came out at the same time, like you said, so pretty nuts. But yeah, now it's evolved into this whole other beast of like this next generation hypercars with figures that honestly you're gonna see today like are just ridiculous. Like you can't even fathom this kind of power. So yeah, the first one we're just gonna dive right in is the Rimac Nevera, and the reason I put this one in the list here is because it's just one of those cars, you don't hear about it a lot, and it's one of those brands that's kind of off the map, but it's also, you know, from one of those areas of the world where you wouldn't expect these kind of cars to come from. And I know Richard Hammond, I'm not sure which model he drove on Top Gear.
I think it was the Concept.
The Concept 1, I think it was, yeah. So it was like a kind of a precursor to this car. So this is like the more refined, even more powerful, believe it or not, car. And yeah, he ended up crashing that one, and it burned for I think 4 days. So
yeah, he was very lucky to be alive.
Yeah, he really was, and he was pretty screwed up, but yeah, definitely he was lucky to be alive. And they just kept joking about how he crashed and how he can't drive, so I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, anyway, so obviously this is an EV, and I know we shat on EVs, but I mean this one's pretty powerful, and it was developed again from that Concept 1 car that Richard Hammond drove. I'm not sure when the original one actually came out, but this one is pretty new. I think this one's from 2020. So it is a pretty new version of this. And it's actually known as the fastest accelerating production vehicle, which I thought was pretty cool. So in terms of figures, it does a 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds.
That's
so
crazy.
About to be beaten by the Tesla Roadster though. By the time that comes out.
Yeah, whenever that comes out. So.
Yeah, I heard a podcast with Elon Musk. I think it was the Joe Rogan one, the more recent one. And he asked him like what the acceleration time is, and he said he couldn't really comment, but he said 1.9 seconds it got like listed, and Elon Musk said that's the base model. So yeah, that should be interesting.
I don't know about that though. That's
he's
crazy.
all for big talk for sure, but yeah, that's going to be pretty ridiculous if it does come true. But anyway, back to the Nevera here. So 2.9 seconds 0 to 100, which is pretty ridiculous. Here's the first crazy figure of today: 1,888 horsepower.
And I think the craziest part though is like this is instant.
Yeah.
Because it's electric. So
exactly.
It's not like, you need for the turbos to compound and all that. No, it's just like that. You get that right away. Exactly.
And it's not one of those Formula 1 cars where you just hear it screaming behind you either. It's just silent, instant power where I feel like that would just hit you like a ton of bricks, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like a roller coaster at that point. Like even, I think the EV, the Hyundai we drove in, I think that was, what was that, 3.9 seconds?
That was the Kia,
right?
Evo 6.
Yeah. What was that, the time 0 to 100? I forget what it was now.
3.2
seconds. Okay, yeah, so it's kind of along the same lines, but...
Maybe 3.4.
Yeah,
it's on Instagram.
Yeah, it was somewhere in the low threes, but it was really, even that felt crazy and like a roller coaster, because again, you don't hear it, you just hear like that mechanical whir of just like the battery power, which is pretty cool.
And I feel like that's kind of the dangerous part. Like, you don't, if everything, all the windows are closed, you don't really like feel the speed. Whereas like a car with an engine, like it'll struggle and like go in between gears, and you your brain kind of processes, okay, I'm in fifth gear, I'm going fast. But this is just like, it goes and goes and goes and goes, and unless you look at the speedo, you don't really know what you're doing.
That's
because you kind of get tunnel vision and like focus on what's ahead. You don't look at the sides and like how fast things are moving. So that's an experience that maybe humans are going to have to get used to.
Yeah, exactly.
The
and
perspective of speed.
I think it's also just like maybe the wind speed. That's like pretty much your only telltale sign that you're going fast. But other than that, that's all you got really.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the cool thing about this is it's finally kind of in that caliber to give like Koenigsegg, Hennessy, and Bugatti a run for their money, which I think is really unique. So it's going to be a big battle in the next couple of years between these big car makers and like who can build the fastest car. And this is constantly evolving too, because even Koenigsegg, we'll talk about as well, has another car that they came out with that is even, beating the Agera RS now. So it's constantly evolving, constantly they're building faster, crazier cars with crazier handling. But now this one can give those a run for the money.
Well, the thing is, unfortunate news, in my opinion. People are saying otherwise, but Rimac and Bugatti have merged now.
Oh, have they? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the Chiron is the last gas-powered, well, it might be hybrid, but last truly gas-powered Bugatti ever. So
that's depressing.
Yeah, so unfortunately Bugatti and Rimac have merged, and who knows what's going to hold, what's to come. Because Rimac is purely electric. They don't do any gas powered, and I think the way they structured it, it's 51% to 49%. So Rimac has a majority stake and majority voting rights.
That's crazy.
The next car might just be a Bugatti with batteries.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know it was that crazy. That's good to know.
And the thing that fascinates me about Rimac is it just came out of nowhere, and to me it almost feels like, I don't want to say a scam, but it's very shady, because Rimac started, the founders started making batteries and like involving battery technology. He swapped it was like an old BMW 3 Series. He swapped it to like a fully electric powertrain and developed that. And then all of a sudden he had enough money to make the Rimac Concept 1 and then put it in production. And they only sell like 150 units?
Yeah, that's it.
They're not even all produced as of today. And this has been going on for years. And then all of a sudden they go in and have majority stake in Bugatti. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, like how does that happen? Like I'm just thinking that these people just have deep pockets. Because I mean, you don't start a hypercar brand just because you can't start it with no money, first of all.
That's the thing. Like where's the funds coming from?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'll have to dive deeper into that. Maybe a separate episode actually.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. But yeah, this car pretty crazy. It's almost got a battery as big as the Model X, hey? 117 kilowatt hours, and the Model X is 123 kilowatt hours. So that huge SUV Tesla, that huge heavy SUV, has almost the same power as this car. And this is a small, lightweight hypercar. Pretty crazy. But yeah, so this is a Croatian car. That's where Rimac is based. It's based in Croatia. And was founded in 2009, which is also pretty recent, by a guy named Mate. I think that's how you say his name, Mate Rimac. So yeah, I guess he's behind the whole merger as well. Another crazy stat is that it does an 8.8 second quarter mile.
That's insane. I think it's 8.6.
Oh, 8.6. Okay.
Yeah,
even better.
That's insane. For completely stock from the factory car to do sub 10 seconds quarter mile. That's crazy. Because people spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their cars below 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Like GTRs, like suiting them up and all that. And then this car is, it is very expensive.
Yeah, let's jump right to that. 2.2 million is the price tag. So
yeah,
it is a hefty price, but I mean, I think you're getting what you're paid for with something like this. Because hypercars aren't for, mass produced markets. Like you see 150 units produced, maybe not even all built yet, like you said. But it's kind of for that specialty market where, the billionaires are, where those crazy car fanatics are, the collectors. That's kind of where this market is aimed at. So I think that price tag, is right in the ballpark.
The thing that would interest me though is same thing happened with the P1s, especially the P1s. They were the worst, but every car that has like batteries will eventually, the batteries will, the lifespan will go down and become useless essentially. And what's happening with the P1s right now is the battery packs are terrible, and so many of them are failing, and that there's so many back orders. McLaren has completely stopped selling batteries, and now it's in the hands of aftermarket companies to take the load, but they're still backed up.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see in the future where we start moving towards battery powered cars and battery packs. Maybe the manufacturer stops making them, and then there's a high demand for battery packs. If your batteries are dead and there's a year wait for the batteries, you're essentially, your car's bricked. Like a $2 million car can't go anywhere.
That's true, yeah, and you're kind of sitting there waiting till they build what you need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem, and I think something we're gonna see more and more as like more electric cars get produced, because there's there's only so much production going on, right?
Yeah.
Interesting take though. But yeah, honestly, this kind of seems like a death machine though, especially seeing how Richard Hammond crashed. Like, it wasn't even that crazy of like a track setup that they had. Like, he just crossed the finish line, they cut to the other two hosts, and then they kind of just look back, they're like, oh shit, he went off the track, and then he had crashed and totaled his car. So I'm curious if that was just the concept one. It very well might be. It might just been the handling, or that the power was maybe not distributed well between the two differentials. But I don't know. What do you think?
It's an interesting thing, because it's still electric cars, especially like very high horsepower and very high torque. We're still, I would say, in the experimental phase. Like, we don't know what they're capable of. We don't know exactly, because like I don't know exactly how the powertrain for this car works. I'm assuming it's kind of like the Teslas, where there's a motor at each wheel.
Yeah.
And, they all work in sync, but if something like a millisecond, something goes wrong and the engine decides to go really fast or slow down, then you're really offsetting the balance of the car.
Agreed, yeah.
So things like that, like quick little mistakes, because, we're working with electronics. There might be some lag, some static, or something that causes an error, and that can be deadly with that much horsepower and going that fast.
That's the thing too, because like I mentioned before we started recording, I went down a rabbit hole when researching these cars, of these like crazy jet powered cars doing like top speed runs in like the middle of the Nevada desert, and some of these, like I don't know if I want to pilot one of these. It's terrifying. Like, you're going like jet speeds, like not just airplane, like jets, like fighter jet speeds in this thing that's on wheels on the ground. Like, any little move with your hands, like, you're dead, right? Like, it's just gonna flip over and explode.
Actually,
like,
Hammond also crashed a jet car
really?
on Top Gear, so that's
I'm gonna have to watch that at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, I watched this one where he was like trying to hit, I think he was going like 550, 600 miles an hour, which is like what, 1,300 kilometers an hour, and he's like, he has to crank the steering wheel all the way to the right because there's such a pull to the left. It's a slight wind, and he literally has to hold the steering wheel all the way to the right till it bounces out. It's just like going back and forth like this at such a speed. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I actually just watched like an hour ago a video of an RX-7 doing that, going the salt flats, and the thing is, like, if you don't have enough downforce pushing down the car at these speeds, you might get lift, where the car like lifts up, and like, it's good for a plane, you're taking off and then you can control with the wings and stuff, but a car you can't. Like, what are you gonna do, turn the steering wheel? That's not gonna do anything. So once you're like, you don't have enough downforce, you get lift, you're essentially dead. Unless you somehow, of course you have a roll cage and all the safety equipment, but once you go in the air, like, who knows how far you'll go up and where you'll land and stuff. So
it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's very dangerous, and I personally wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it,
probably,
but
not.
Someone has to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like there's adrenaline junkies out there that love that stuff, but yeah, I'm not quite there yet. Maybe after I experience a crazy car, then maybe. Yeah. All right, let's move on. That's long enough on that one. Do you want to introduce the second one?
Yeah, so this one has been long awaited. It's still, we don't have the record just yet. So this is a Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute. and this is an absolute beast.
Yeah, even just looking at this thing, it looks insane. Like, there's concept cars, and then there's this thing. Like, this thing is sexy. Like, that front end, like, obviously it's a Jesco, you can see that very clearly, but it's got those back, like, shark fins, and, like, the rear cover on those wheels that it just screams, like, top speed car.
Yeah. So this is Koenigsegg set the record for the fastest production car with the Agera RS. And crazy story about this one, it was actually a customer car. So they built the car for the customer, and then they reached out to him and was like, hey, we're trying to break the speed record, can we use your car?
Okay, I guess.
Yeah, so like props to the owner, and this guy drives that car like all the time.
That's so sick.
I think he's in LA. So yeah, you can see that car if you're in LA at car shows. But yeah, they set this speed record, and then I think the Chiron Supersport broke it. So right now Bugatti's the holder of the fastest production car.
Yeah.
And then Koenigsegg obviously wants to claim it back. So they made the Jesco, and the Jesco normally has, it's more of a track car, so it has the big wing, less like boxy back end and stuff. But they made the Absolute to reclaim this, and they went all out with aerodynamic.
Oh yeah, they
They removed the wing, the back wing, so it's not good for like downward pressure, but it reduces drag, which is what you want at top speeds. Exactly. The shark fins kind of help create turbulence, so like instead of stagnant air, it kind of breaks it up, so it flows right through.
Like a slipstream kind of.
Yeah, they have that on Evos, like really old Evos. They had like little vortex at the top.
You're right, yeah.
And then they created, it's kind of a long tail, so like really long back end, boxy, so like the air kind of flows through it. And then the back wheels, for the air to kind of flow through, they just put like caps on it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, this thing really, it looks insane, and I'm sure it's gonna break the record. Like, it's built exactly for that.
Yeah.
And the engine has 1600 horsepower, which is insane.
It's actually insane. Like, this is still that same V8 twin turbo, which is ridiculous. Just
so this is
pumping it.
Yeah, I think it's different than the Agera.
Yeah, it probably is. Like, Krzysztof Koenigsegg, he's always building some insane shit. Like, even just like I watched a YouTube video a while ago about like some of the transmission links that they were working on or something, and the way he explains it and like talks about it, I'm just like, what the hell's he even saying? Like, I have no idea. Like, he's so smart.
So this car has the world's smallest and lightest transmission, 8-speed transmission.
And how much it weighs?
You can pick it up like with both hands.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I watched a video. Engineer explained, just to try to wrap my head around it, and they completely reinvented the dual clutch. And
so crazy.
Yeah, I don't remember, and I'm not an engineer, so half of it went over my head. But it's really fascinating to see how much they really like simplified it. Yeah. Like, when you listen, you're like, oh yeah, like that makes sense.
Yeah, just explaining it in layman's terms so that we can kind of start to comprehend it.
Yeah.
That's impressive too. I feel like there's being smart, but then there's being smart and be able to, dumb it down for people. It's like two different levels of smart, I feel like.
Yeah, but really, Koenigsegg is the king of engineering, and they managed to make this car. It's it's definitely gonna break the speed record, but it's also gonna break the bank at 3.4 million, and it's definitely limited. I don't know how many units, but it's definitely a lower amount than the normal Jesco, and they also have the Jesco Absolute, and I think another version. If I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is definitely the craziest.
It is crazy. And like, for those records, it's kind of cool because they don't want like a world record, they want like a Guinness World Record. So what they're trying to do is get an average speed of going two directions. So they're going one direction and then the other to kind of average the speeds with the wind and everything. So that's when the Chiron Supersport, or is it Chiron Supersport?
Supersport,
yeah. So that's the one that broke the record doing that. But what's interesting here is that they don't just use like a racetrack or like an airstrip. They use an empty stretch of desert highway, and it's like a highway, and then they get the cops to like block it off, and that's where they do their testing, which is pretty unique too. They just like do that instead of getting like an airstrip or something. So props to them for sure. Now what's crazy is that they're claiming that this thing can do 310 miles an hour. So that's roughly about 500 kilometers an hour.
Which, yeah, the craziest part to me is, like, theory is rubber tires will explode at 500 kilometers an hour.
I can imagine, yeah.
Like, you can't physically have tires that will, handle that much heat and that much rotation.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like, that we're getting this close to 500. And,
who knows? Maybe the material is also some special Christian von Koenigsegg thing.
Probably. They're probably working. I know Bugatti work with Michelin to build like high speed or top speed rated tires, which is important. But there's only so far a piece of rubber can go.
That's true. Yeah. Eventually, you have to start thinking about rubber compound, where it's like mixed with maybe even metal or something maybe not heavier, because for rotation that'd be shit, but something that holds together better or something.
I think they have thin threads of some sort of metal, maybe titanium or maybe some other metal to like keep the structure, but it's still like rubber's gonna puncture. It's
of course
a giant balloon at this point, and at these speeds the tire pressure is probably getting so hot that maybe you'll melt the inside of the tire or something. It's pretty crazy.
I'll just pulverize, honestly. Yeah, pretty insane, honestly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So now the last one.
This thing, oh my god.
This thing is, I'll let you introduce it, but I have doubts about this.
Okay. Yeah, me too, because this is it's an Abu Dhabi special. It's it's from the UAE, which is, they have various projects, let's just say, that haven't come to fruition.
Yeah.
So that's why we have our doubts, partly. Well, when I was learning about it, why I did. But honestly, if this does happen, it would be insane. So this is called the Devil 16, and exactly like it sounds, it's a beast. Even just looking at this thing, it looks like a concept car, which technically they've been produced now. They got introduced at the Dubai International Auto Show in 2017, but like, it just looks insane. Like, this thing, again, like the Koenigsegg, is built for aerodynamics. It's very clear that's how they built it. But this thing is on another level, and it has over 12.3 liter V16 engine. This isn't an EV. It's just, it's a full-on V16 motor in one of these things. And the cool thing is there's 3 different models. So there's a base model with a V8 that has, I think, something crazy like 1,300 horsepower. There's a V16 just flat, naturally aspirated, with about 1,800 horsepower. And then there's the V16 quad turbo. And this thing, I don't even know if I'm reading this right, to be honest, but it makes over 5,000 horsepower. And
that's nuts.
Yeah, 3,600 foot-pounds of torque.
But
like, you can't even imagine what that must feel like. Like, you just, I don't even know if a human body can manage that full out.
I don't know. Like, that's
insane.
Yeah, I wonder how it
keeps it on the ground. Like the tires can handle putting it onto the road. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think about right away.
But also the G-force you experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a fighter jet almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's insane. And yeah, like, this thing was originally conceptualized back in 2006, and they brought like a concept of it to the Dubai International Auto Show somewhere in early 2010s. And then late 2010s, back in 2017, they finally had the first production model, which only had the V8 in there. So in the next couple of years here, they're expecting to begin full production of the V16 quad turbo versions.
Yeah, so this thing has been teased in so many videos and clickbait articles for, God, we're nearing 10 years now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's never, in my opinion, it's never going to get made. It's one of those things where it's about like wow factor. Mm-hmm. It's just insane, like, wow, I want one, but it's never gonna get made. It's similar to the Lycan Motorsport, mm-hmm. which is also based in UAE, and they wanted to be the most luxurious hypercar out there. But in reality, when they ended up making it and started taking orders, it just was an overpriced V6, twin turbo V6 car that didn't really make any sense to purchase. And people, at first they thought that it was cool, but people weren't opening their checkbooks to like buy headlights with emerald in them for $1 million. Like nobody.
It's just these ridiculous asks of like, you know, people don't even want that.
Yeah, like same with this car. It looks crazy.
It does.
It's, if it, you know, was backed up by its performance, but it's never gonna happen. First of all, a V16 with 5,000 horsepower doesn't make sense. No. And also just in terms of like being realistic. So in my opinion, we got UAE, which is big dreamers, big visionaries who like think outside the box but don't really take into factor reality. And then on the other hand, we have Germans who like are very, very focused on functionality and not so much designs. Yeah, which is why we're seeing the new BMWs just being ruined, because it's all about aerodynamics and all this functionality, and then they end up with a car that kind of looks funky.
It's a good point. Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a general trend in like the car world nowadays. It's all kind of more focused on that functionality instead of looks. I just recently saw a photo of the new 2024 Mustang, and they just keep going down the wrong path with those designs. I'm just not a fan, and I see that more and more with a lot of the cars. They're becoming smaller, they're becoming more like each other, and I think if cars sell well, like for example, like the BMW 3 Series sells well, and a lot of manufacturers copy the design, and so all these cars are starting to look almost identical because they're all trying to emulate that same shape and format and form factor to kind of get to that same place. So it's interesting to see where that goes. And like we've talked about this before, even with like the whole SUV boom with the luxury SUVs, how it's just all kind of become like a game for maximizing profit, which obviously makes sense, it's a business, but there used to be so much more passion involved in car making, and
just like people driving. Passion. That's really upsetting.
It's almost like in a way embodying the AI age, kind of. It's almost like these AI generated designs in a way. Yeah, that's kind of how it feels.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. There's still, in our next episode, we'll cover a true passion project. It's a car that makes no sense but is built just for passion. But yeah, to your point, we're just missing passion in the car industry, and some companies are still doing it. Like I feel like Porsche is still clinging on to kind of the fun, like sporty cars, especially they're keeping the manuals alive. There's a few other manufacturers like the GT86. Sure, it's underpowered. Sure, it's kind of overpriced for what it is, but it's a car that is kind of attainable to, you know, your average Joe. Has manual options, looks amazing. The second like generation is kind of controversial. I prefer it, but it's still kind of the today Miata.
Exactly, and that's the thing. There are those examples of cars like that. Like another example that comes to mind is the Kia Stinger. Like it's one of those cars. Like it doesn't look the best, but like they executed it so well.
I'm sorry to burst roll. It's been canceled. Like
nice. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
So no more Stinger.
No more Challenger. Every good thing is getting taken away.
Yeah. So that's why it's tough. Like we can, if you're passionate about cars and you want something, fun and kind of exciting, there's still like a giant used car market.
Yeah, that's true.
But it sucks to know that the flow is shrinking. So, in 10 years, when you look at the used car market, there's going to be a lot less options unless you go for a car that's like 20, 30 years old.
That's the thing, right? And I mean, there might even come a point where they're going to, taper off and close gas stations. When we get to a point where most people have switched to EV or whatever the next hot thing is, that's going to be, our mode of transport. Like I'm curious how long it'll take us to get there. Obviously, the car industry is a very slow-moving, oiled machine, but yeah, it's kind of sad to think that eventually we'll get to that point. but who knows?
Let's not end on depressing note.
Yeah, let's end on a happy note. These are very powerful cars. Hypercars are great.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, technology keeps moving forward, and you know, the more tech and the more engineering that follows cars, the more we truly understand how to extract as much power and push the limit for cars.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing, you know, every couple years, a new speed record, and then faster acceleration, you know, more technology based around, let's say, carbon fiber, Kevlar, and all that. So cars are stronger, safer.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring. Like, I'm excited to see what's next.
No,
you know?
me too. And I've even heard like some crazy stories about like how the internal combustion engine can be revived because they're working on this like replacement fuel for gasoline that's supposedly like environmentally friendly and like compostable and stuff like that. But you can literally just be put into a fuel tank of any like normal car, and it can just run normally, and it explodes like normally and everything. It's just this like synthetic thing they're working on, but the emissions from it are literally just water and oxygen. So that's pretty crazy. So that would be a really cool way to, you know, solve a problem that without replacing the entire fleet of vehicles.
That would be cool, because that was kind of the purpose of ethanol E85.
Exactly.
It was deemed as this kind of more environmentally friendly, more less impactful, like to pull out and extract, but it did require a whole new map of the engine and in different intakes, our fuel system, fueling.
Yeah.
And it just never really caught on, because people weren't, you know, you're not going to take your Honda Accord to a shop to get E85 swap and then retune it. And then most gas stations don't even carry it. So,
but you know what though? Like if say for example, like for electric cars, right? We had these huge incentives to install home chargers and everything and buy electric cars. If something like that comes along and they figure that E85 is 10 times better for the environment than gas, and they offer these incentives to get people to swap those parts over at a shop. First of all, you're creating jobs at shops for people that can do that stuff. And second, those people would have an incentive to do it. And then if you also make ethanol cheaper at the gas station than gas, you know what I mean? Like it'll catch on pretty quick, I feel like, if they implement that right, which is, you know, easier said than done. But
yeah, because then the government's involved. But that's a good idea. Like if we really want change, we have to make the change easy for people.
Exactly. Yeah, subsidize it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even say it costs $10,000 to do it, even if they pay $5,000, you're like, shit, that's half price, you know what I mean? And you don't have to buy a new car. You can simply just, you know, carry over that into the new car or into your old car, and then you have a car that runs on ethanol.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure what the emissions are from ethanol actually, but I know it's cleaner than gasoline for sure.
Yeah, and apparently your car smells like corn.
Yeah,
cool.
Actually, there was a guy with the GTR, that blue one, and he drove it on E85. It just smelled like, you know, someone drunk was driving in front of you. It's pretty funny. It literally just smells like ethanol.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny.
It's pretty crazy though. If it's not tuned properly, because it's so, like, it has a higher chance of detonation, which is like
that's true,
exploding before the compression. You can ruin your engine.
I heard that too. You can, like, engine knocking is more common.
Yeah, so that's kind of I guess one of the big issues. Like, it has to be very tuned. Tuned very well, and also temperatures kind of mess with it. So like in colder environments, it can.
Yeah, I mean, it might be fixable with some additives though.
True.
Like, I'm sure they could add some stabilizers and stuff into it to make it. I mean, they do that with gas too, to make it better in the cold and stuff. So I'm sure there is a way to evolve. But yeah, all right, this episode's been long enough. Talked about 3 hypercars today. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next week for episode 28.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.